Lenny from After Later Audio, thank you for inviting me around.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
We've got one of the nicest framed shots, I think. You've certainly won on that regard, I think, from this trip. And a cat impersonator off to the side. Yeah. And a dog. It wasn't even a cat that walked by.
There you go.
But After Later Audio,
yeah.
Some new products, but we've not met before. And I'd like to go back a little bit of not your whole musical history, but what led you into synths and ultimately starting to make modules.
Yeah. So I actually started many years back, 25 years ago. Started playing when I was in Chicago. Was doing DJ work and then started producing my own tracks. Working with a small label there in Chicago. Got to put a couple tracks out and play then, and then broke off for a while to have kids, do the family, do the career thing. And
you were saying a 909, a 303, Chicago, done.
Yeah, 303, 909. I mean, I was living in Chicago, going to school in the Detroit area, and so yeah, I mean, 909, 303. Those were certainly the dance floor fillers of that generation for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what brought you back across from Chicago over to the West Coast? Well, to the West Coast, not necessarily back to.
Sure. So it was my wife and I essentially decided we just didn't want to live in Chicago for our whole lives and wanted to go and try out the West Coast. And we're trying to choose between San Francisco and Seattle. And we had honeymooned here in Seattle, going out to the Olympics and hiking out there, and just absolutely loved it out here. So ended up choosing to move out to Seattle.
So musically, very much kind of acid house, dance scene. I imagine that amassed a ton of gear as you were getting into this.
It did, certainly did. I mean, but yeah, back in the day with all the XOX boxes, and then now even today, was just super thrilled to discover all the Electron line and the analog A4. That really just kind of brought me back into the synth world. Yeah, it's just been great discovering now all the kind of crazy analog options that are available. Seeing all that again has been really great to discover.
So where did the modular bug come into it? The fever, as Ross Lamon likes to call it. When did the fever strike?
Yeah. So it was actually, as part of this whole synth thing, I had kind of seen the Eurorack style and all the different modular formats. And I was telling myself, one day you're going to get into all that. And ended up I was trying to not, because I saw the pit that was in front of me.
You could see.
Yeah, exactly. I could see the hole that I was going to jump into. But then I was actually, unfortunately, in a car accident, and ended up with a concussion. And so what I ended up doing during that time period, 'cause you can't read, you're not on screens, or you're trying to go through recovery and get the brain to settle. And so I was even struggling with alphabetizing at times. But what I was able to do essentially was start soldering. So I started putting together kits. And so I did, of course, the DIY 808, DIY 909, full case drum machines. And then as I started getting my wits about me a bit more and started recovering a bit more, started doing some of the clone DIY Eurorack kits, because I felt it was cost prohibitive. So it was a way for me to get in and keep costs low, essentially, and start in there, and started essentially building, and that essentially is snowballed into what After Later Audio is today.
Why do the clones? And I don't mean that as a judgmental question, but just they are available, they are out there, they are open source. Yeah. What was it that kind of made you think, right, this is kind of how I want to get going?
Yeah, so it was the power. I mean, I was really drawn to the power of the and the functionality that was there, combined with the UX that Mutable presents, that Emily's able to present there, is just incredible. And I felt like it was a great place to go and learn from. And so started there, and then also discovering all the micros that all the various designers have put out there. Then I was able to go and learn the translation, essentially, of how people are learning how to translate these from a hardware layer, and really start learning hardware design and start start that learning adventure. So yeah, that's what drew me in.
So then, yeah, exactly that. So at this point, when did the spark come in and you think, I could do my own designs?
Yeah, it was getting that confidence up of starting to do hardware design. So I did a power supply to start, because I figured that was if you're going to learn anywhere, start at the root. The root of everything is the power supply.
Yeah. Messing with mains voltage seems like a dangerous thing to do.
More dangerous on the other side of the pond, if you will, because it's the 240 there versus the 120 here. But yeah, it's still certainly more dangerous than the 12 volt or 24 volt total.
But certainly the backbone.
Exactly, it was the backbone. It seemed like a decent place to start. No UX. I could just focus on just laying out components and being sure I got all the traces the right size and traces optimized, learning all the tooling, all that. Yeah.
Will we potentially see a power supply commercially available?
So I've opted not to, only because of the design choices that I made, which essentially brought mains power into the case, and so I don't want to essentially be retailing something. Well, I just don't want to actually be retailing something that involves exposed mains power in a case. I feel like it exposes people to too much risk if they don't know what they're doing.
And the amount of testing and compliance I imagine you have to follow for this is insane.
Yeah, absolutely. So likely won't be selling a power supply, and I also feel like there's a ton of great ones there at very reasonable price points already. So I haven't certainly not feeling inspired to go and just do a after later PSU.
And from what we've heard today, and what ultimately I knew before coming out, I'd heard bits already.
Yeah.
But great sounding, and I say that having played with them.
Thank you.
Not because you told me to. Great sounding, kind of bread and butter, simple modules that just do the job well.
Yeah.
Was that a really obvious first thing, that just I want to get the basics down, establish the grounding for subtractive kind of analog synthesis? There's of course patch options to go West Coast, East Coast, whatever you want. But was that a really obvious thing?
Yeah, it was. So again, going back to those roots, those kind of Chicago roots and that XOX roots, getting these kind of vintage Curtis electronic music chips and exposing those in just their kind of raw, original vintage form was really enticing to me. It did enable this nice, simple modules that are still super feature rich, because those ICs offer just a ton of functionality straight out of the box. So just being able to go and expose all that was really enticing to me.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's nice to know musically their history into what you were using back in Chicago as well. Yeah. Familiar tones, familiar circuits as well. So these are priced cheaply, I would say.
Yeah.
Is that, again, a really conscious choice? Are you wanting to deliberately come in low and really kind of target that part of the market, or is it just about people having access to these things?
Yeah. So it is actually about the last item that you brought up there. It's about accessibility. Some of the early days of selling the modules that I was making, either from the clones of the Mutable or from some of the DIY only options that are out there, and trading those and selling them locally, discovered the appreciation that people had. People on lower incomes that were really trying to play with synths and trying to make all this work, were super appreciative of the lower price points and cutting cutting deals and just trying to make things as affordable as possible. I really want to. I want more people to be able to play with Eurorack and to get started in the space, and so that's what drove the motivation on pricing.
So for new modules, we've got an oscillator, filter, envelope, and is there a Turing machine as well?
Yeah, so as part of the whole effort on reworking hardware, part of that was to go and bring down the Turing machine down to a smaller HP, again, to make it fit in more people's cases, and ideally from a price point, be able to make it a bit more appealing as well for folks to pick up. But yeah, then the oscillator seemed like a good natural place to go and start, and make those make that kind of full functionality available from all the way from the sync, PWM, FM, nice 5-volt tracking on it. It seemed like an absolute great place to start.
The audio at PWM was nice.
Really
nice.
You like that?
Yeah. As was on the filter, the whole yoy croaky formant thing.
Yeah,
was really cool too.
Formants always make me perk up. It sounds so nice.
And there's a couple of extra things on the envelope as well. It's not just the basic ADSR.
Exactly, yeah. So I tried to offer all the modulation points on it as well. So modulation for all the 4 points in the envelope, the attack, decay, sustain, release, but then also did a bit of delayed trigger on those as well. So at the end of attack and end of release, you can get a nice little trigger out just to kind of bring a little bit of more complexity to a patch.
Yeah, great. I look forward to hearing more of them, but what's kind of coming next? It makes me wonder, are you going to carry on fleshing out the kind of cheaper modules? Have you got, bigger ideas for what filters could be? Or,
yeah, sure. Yeah, so it's always a race in engineering versus in ideas, and watching all those come together. So you never know which module is actually going to be next. But certainly looking to continue to build out this line of kind of small, again, kind of root of modular synthesis. So likely heading into more CV options going forward. And I'm making those available. So
great. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. And of course, if people want to leave anything in the comments, I can pass those on to you if I can't answer. And we'll hopefully see more soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ben.
Thank you.